Well, hello and welcome to WooStream, bringing Willamette to you. My name is Abby Kale, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni and Parent Engagement here at Willamette. Today's conversation will feature Stacey Lane. Stacey is a career coach whose specialty is helping individuals with unique backgrounds figure out where they fit, how to market themselves, and find a career that's as interesting as they are. She works across industries and professional areas, known for her candid career guidance. Her advice has appeared in local and national publications. You can find her at staceylane.net or connect with her on LinkedIn. I will post links to both of those in the chat here in just a second. Today, Stacey is going to talk us through leveraging our personal brand. Whether you need help standing out in a crowd of applicants or identifying new career options that excite you, knowing your personal brand is key. With clarity about your brand, you'll attract the right opportunities rather than having to chase them down. We'll talk about all of that here shortly, but please join me in welcoming Stacey Lane. Stacey, thank you so much for taking time today to talk about these great resources and tools that we need to have in our toolkit.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about this topic because I think one of the things that people can all relate to, or professionals, whether they're entering into the workforce or thinking about a pivot, we've all had that experience of seeing people that seamlessly can kind of, talk about themselves or position themselves for another opportunity or to do a pivot. And I know I got really curious about that early on in my career when I would see people that were successful of pivoting, thinking like, what are they doing that either I'm not doing or what is it, the kind of that magic formula? And what I discovered is, those people are generally pretty clear about their personal brand, and that personal brand is not some kind of marketing gimmick or idea. It's really it's really getting clear about what it is that you bring to the table. So before we get started, though, I want to do a little bit of a poll about personal branding. So Abby, if you'll set up that first poll, I just want to test your knowledge about personal branding. And here we go. So just your answers are anonymous, but if you'll weigh in, what's true about your personal brand? You can change it at any time. You're in complete control over it. Others determine your brand, not you, or it's synonymous with professional image. So just give everybody a chance to kind of weigh in here. All right. Well, I didn't mean to trick you. Not everybody has weighed in. I didn't mean to trick you, but it looks like I actually have tricked you. And honestly, it wasn't intentional. But the truth about personal branding is that others determine your brand, you don't. So I think there's an idea that we control it, but really what our personal brand is it's our. Oh, let me share the results. I'm going to share the results. Yep. Okay. Can everybody see those? So the right answer is the third one, which is others determine your brand, not you. I think that these are all kind of branding myths. That's why I use them to really point out that we are really not in control. Like that cultivated image that some of us may think about in terms of a brand, or like we can cultivate an image. We really can't. And here's why, because here's the truth about branding. Branding is determined by others. Another way to think about this is it's what others say when you leave the room. There goes Tyler. He's the one who can pull us all together or move us forward or whatever it is. Like it's the words that people use to describe you when you're not there, when you're not in the room, or possibly when they introduce you to others. It is our professional reputation, and it's others' perception of you, and based on the emotional appeal that we have, that rather than just the rational. So we know that good branding, because we're consumers and we're being bombarded with it constantly, is there is an emotional appeal connection. And we also have that with our personal brand. So we can't overlook that. So sometimes it's that people know you as the one to kind of bring clarity or calm things down or bring good energy to something. I mean, that's part of your personal brand. That's not the only thing that your personal brand is, but that is a piece of it. And then the last one is what's very important to know about your brand is that it's very unique to you. That's why copying somebody's LinkedIn summary and copying parts of other people's resumes tends to backfire because it's not describing you and what you bring to the table. So nobody has a brand like yours. That's the good news. The bad news is nobody has a brand like yours, so you can't borrow things, words, phrases from other people very easily and have it sound authentic to you. Now, the other thing about this is that it's a hard process, right? Because we have to get other people's input on our brand. We don't see it clearly for ourselves. It's just one of those things. It's really hard to see your own brand clearly. Actually, I don't know anybody that can fully understand what their own brand is without getting some outside input. And that makes us vulnerable, right? It's vulnerable to ask people for their input, ask them for their opinion, ask them for their impression. And we really think that we can go at this alone. But it takes longer if you do that. So what I'd like to say is I think that why this is a competitive advantage is that if you take the time before you embark on a pivot, a search, trying to maybe up-level your career in some way, if you spend the time getting clear about your personal brand, in the long run, you're going to make progress more quickly. But it's that energy up front that feels, I don't know if this was really worth it. I just want to jump into finding something new. I need to get my resume written so that I can start applying for jobs. And I would say, take a little bit of time to really thoroughly assess your brand and what it is that you're known for. And that will really help you in the long run make progress quickly and also find the right opportunities. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but finding the right opportunities is really important, especially in this world, the changing world of work. It's becoming even more important. And if your brand is not syncing with either a company brand, an organizational brand, even a team brand, when there's a mismatch there, can be a little uncomfortable. So this is what I want you to know about a brand. And why personal brand? So I chose this image because, it's a noisy world out there, right? There's lots happening. It's just, we're getting bombarded with lots of information from every single avenue, and hiring managers, people that you might want to network with, recruiters, they're all experiencing this information overload. And what a brand does is it helps you to get really, really clear again of what you bring to the table so you can cut through that noise. Networking, recruiting, hiring, all of those areas can be impacted to your benefit when you're clear about what you bring to the table. You'll work less hard, right, to find that perfectly matched career, and you'll get noticed. So it's not an all things to all people, right? The one size fits all approach doesn't work. Instead, really understanding where you fit and what's unique about you really helps you cut through that noise. So let's do the next poll. And I want to find out a little bit more about you and who's on this call today. So I want to ask you where you are career-wise. Part of the Great Resignation, considering a pivot, still finding a fit, thinking about options, none of the above. Just see where people are. All right. So I think we've got a good mix here. Do you want to share the poll? Thinking about options. So this is perfect for you, right? This is also perfect if you've already left something, if you're trying to find a fit, if you're considering a pivot, because all of this information, getting clear about your brand, is going to help you at each of those kind of, I call them, growth periods in your career where you're kind of thinking about what's next, or thinking about how you can angle into something different. So thanks for doing that poll. I'm going to take you to the next slide. And let's talk about what's inside of your personal brand. And one of the things I want to mention is, going inside your personal brand is really, and I'll talk about what some of those elements are that you need to address. But I want to share with you a story. To my point earlier about trying to break through the noise. And it's a bit of a newsflash for a lot of people. Companies hire specialists. They don't necessarily hire generalists. And it's really hard kind of not to regurgitate what you see in a job description, right? When you're applying for a job or you're thinking about, well, is this the right fit for me? By the way, job descriptions are completely one-dimensional. Don't fall for the trap of reading a job description and trying to determine if it's the job for you just based on the job description. And to that point, let me tell you about somebody I was recently working with that applied for a job in the Midwest. And one of the things that she thought would give her that would be a deterrent to somebody hiring her in the Midwest is that her experience was in technology on the West Coast. Well, there's not a lot of technology companies in the Midwest. And she really thought that would be, that could be a barrier to her entry. But what she didn't discover until she was in the interview process was that experience was extremely valuable to that employer. Because while that employer was not in technology, they were looking at expanding onto the West Coast or into the West Coast market. And her understanding of how the dynamics of that, kind of what that looked like, maybe some centers of concentration that the company might want to look at, was absolutely invaluable. Now, it wasn't part of the job description, right? They didn't say must have West Coast experience or looking for somebody who's done this on the West Coast. They didn't have that in there at all. And she actually talked to somebody internally at the company who didn't know that either. So that was not discovered until she went through the interview process. So she had really overestimated the lack of that local experience and the impact that it would have on her career. So that's where, you can be surprised at those things. And I'm going to talk about that. I would consider that kind of a career milestone or maybe a career highlight for her that she wants to make sure that she emphasizes going forward, potentially, right? So it's that thing that you don't think is that valuable, but it is actually really valuable to an organization or to making a pivot that you might want to make. It's called a unique narrative. Right? So what makes up your brand? Your brand is you and all of the things that you are, and then your experience. And I don't think one is weighted more heavily than the other, but what we tend to think about with brand is we tend to focus on this piece, which is the personality, which are your, brand attributes. Are you, what are you the go-to person for? Are you the positive influence? Are you the one that brings people together? Are you the one that just, hammers through and gets things done? Are you the entrepreneurial mindset on the team? Are you the person who can look at big picture and then figure out the tactical things that need to happen? We tend to think about these things and place a lot of weight on and think that this is just brand, because a lot of people confuse. For some reason, the word that was coming to my mind was conceive. Some people confuse personal brand with charisma. And charisma is not your brand. Your brand actually has a lot more substance to that. And that's why we also look at that experience piece. But if you're wanting to kind of think now about yourself, it's not just personality, but what is your reputation? What are your attributes? What are the solid things about you, how you show up, how you perform, what people know about you, those skills that you've developed, as well as that important piece of what's important to you. What are your values? What are the things that you intrinsically hold as important or that you want to take? I call it the things that you want to take a stand for. So the experience piece is the other piece. So it's you and experience. And the experience piece, I like to break it down because it's not just like where you've worked and the job titles that you've had or what your senior thesis was, what work study programs you did or work study work that you were involved in. It is all of these different things. It's exposure to markets. It's exposure to technology. It's exposure to things that are happening in the economy, in business, in law. It's all of those things combined that make your experience unique to you. So another way to think about this, I think sometimes it's helpful is how can you provide some context to your experience so that people understand what the importance is around the project or a work-focused experience or an exposure. Now, I put work-focused experiences here rather than just the general word of experiences because I really want to remind people that, yes, we are kind of a accumulation of all of these different things that have happened to us, but work experiences are really important. We can't overlook that it has to be related to something professional. And for new grads, I know sometimes you struggle with that, but you actually have it. You have it in projects that you've worked on, things that you've done on campus involvement, as well as people that are looking to pivot. There's real value in some of the things that you've already done, but to be able to look at them more kind of independently, like projects or initiatives that you've been involved in, and then think about what is the context around that would be helpful for somebody to be, or that somebody needs to understand about that so that I can translate that into a new field. So I love this idea of career capital, and that's really what your brand is, right? Your brand needs to really, really communicate what your career capital is. Now, I borrowed this phrase. This is not unique to me. This is actually from Cal Newport, and he defines career capital as the skills you have that are both rare and valuable, and that can be used as leverage in defining your career. Now, I love that definition, but I would expand it to include any experiences that you've been a part of. It's the whole of what you bring to the table. And thinking about what's rare and valuable, like my client applying for a job in the Midwest had underestimated some of her experience as career capital because it wasn't obviously shared in the job description. So those are kind of some happy surprises that can happen, but you need to do the due diligence for anybody that you're having conversations with about maybe a pivot or trying to figure out what else you want to do. You need to do the due diligence here because nobody's going to work hard to figure this out for you. We need you to do the work. You don't have to be crystal clear. It doesn't have to be kind of like all laid out. You don't have to have like a PowerPoint about your personal brand, but we need you to understand the value of what you bring. All right. People always ask me, okay, so that's great. I understand about personal brand, but now what do I do, right? How do I find that information? So you have to get input from others. And there's some ways that you can do this. You can do it through one-on-one feedback. One of the things I like to do is I like to have my clients send out a little survey to their professional contacts. And basically there's a few questions that they ask. What are my greatest strengths? What are my personality pluses? What are my most notable accomplishments? And what's interesting here is that it's not always professional, but it's usually kind of like that hero's journey, something that they've overcome, an obstacle, maybe being a first generation college student, maybe being the first, family member to graduate. Maybe it's that they overcame a learning disability or didn't get into law school the first time that they applied. Like there's these really interesting connections that people make about your notable accomplishments, but it says a lot. Again, those translate into your personal brand: tenacity, right? Focus, dedication, commitment to a goal. And then the other questions are, what is my most unique feature or the most interesting thing about me? Very interesting question to ask. And then, what do other people notice about myself that I might not see for myself? So what do other people notice about me that I might not notice about myself? And what we're getting at with that are blind spots or things that you may take for granted. So the interesting thing about a personal brand is that a lot of these, the things, our brand attributes, the things that we do naturally, we assume everybody else does it really well. I'm going to attack my favorite that I hear all the time. And that is, I'll talk to people and say, what is it that you do really well? And people say, I'm a people person. I just want to be like, no. Being a people person is great. And I know what you're trying to convey with that, but guess what? Everybody else calls themselves a people person. And after a while, that term takes on a very generic quality. I want to know what your flavor of people person is. Is it that you're comfortable meeting strangers? Is it that you can get curious about anybody? Is it that you can adapt your style to be able to work with others? Like, that's the piece that we need to go beyond the generic and really get the sense of what it is for you. So that's one-on-one feedback. Oh, is there a question?
Quick question. Yeah. And it's actually really relevant. What type of questions would you ask to get more constructive feedback on your personal brand? And what this would be with a goal to get more points out of growth that could benefit you?
Yeah, I would ask blind spots. What are my blind spots? I would ask, rate me on a scale of 1 to 10. And then you could have it be, very specific areas. So, sometimes just think about a 360. What are the types of things that you would be measured on in a company 360? So it could be leadership ability. It could be ability to be strategic, communicate. It could be lead others. It could be to work well on a team. So I think you can ask pointed questions like that. But I think one of the best questions is, what are my blind spots? Not do I have any blind spots, but what are my blind spots? And also I think there's another piece of this, which when we do this type of one-on-one feedback, we actually make sure that it's anonymous to the person that's getting the feedback. And I think that that's really important because I think people are more willing to share their feedback if they think that it's going to be anonymous. And again, not asking, do I have any blind spots, but what are my blind spots? What is the one area of growth? If you could pick any area of growth for me, what would that area be? Another great way, so you're not assuming that they're going to say, oh, you don't have any growth areas, but identifying that that there's probably got to be one. Now, personal interviews, these are great. I mean, if there's people that you could actually sit down and say, what do you notice about me? We worked together on this project. Do you have any, again, it's a little bit based on that one-on-one feedback, but it's a little bit more, allows for a little bit more dialogue, to dig a little bit deeper, to ask about, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? You said that I'm really good at meeting deadlines. Can you give me an example of that? And the more that you're able to hear it from somebody else's view, the better sense you'll get of your personal brand attributes. Again, I have to tell you this. you cannot discount any of the feedback that you get. We as humans are conditioned to be like, oh, yeah. I know that. That's not telling me anything I don't know. So we discount what feels familiar instead of really embracing it and saying, yeah, I really need to appreciate that that's something that's unique about me. And we assume everybody's like that too. So I have a client that is in a finance role who has a very, very high emotional intelligence, like really can read a room really well. That's actually really, I'm not going to say it's rare for finance people, but it's not something that you would necessarily expect from somebody who's in finance that has that ability to kind of really walk in and read a room. But that's really part of their professional brand. So again, what is it that you do really well? Don't discount it. Please, please, please. Now, performance evaluations, so any formal performance evaluations that you've received, there's interesting information in there that can tell you a lot about your brand. I know you used to always get stuff done, right? Like that used to always be across my performance evaluations, right? Like able to execute, able to get things done, overcomes obstacles, whatever. We all have that. Performance evaluations could include things like, being more leadership like, or having more leadership call. Well, that tells you a little bit about your personal brand. Is it your style to kind of sit back and observe? So it's not like you're not a good leader. It's just like, what is your style of leadership? What does that really look like? You can do personality assessments, so that for the personality pluses, I think it helps a lot of people to do a personality assessment. There's some online that you can do. They can be super, super helpful for a lot of people. Myers-Briggs, strong interest inventory. There's a motivational assessment of personal potential. It's called MAP. There's lots out there. Free, paid, whatever. You kind of get what you pay for, but whatever. But they're good for just sometimes giving us language to the things that we already know about ourselves. Okay, other areas. Look at your LinkedIn endorsements. Right? What do people say about you? Again, this is in their words, and that's what makes it valuable. Is any time, and again, to the interviewing, doing like personal interviews of people, when you hear it in their words, that's what's important, because their words describe you differently than you describe yourself. And that's where the real, again, because we don't determine our personal brand, it's others' perception of us. That's why it's important to hear it in their words. Look at your favorite projects or career highlights. So things that you really, really enjoyed, things that you did well, a peak experience, the idea of a peak experience at work. We all have them. Maybe a project that you worked on, maybe a club or an organization that you were involved in, that you had a real commitment to the social mission or what they were doing. These are all indicators for you of some of the elements of your personal brand. One of the things I always have clients do is do a personal or like a career timeline. If you've got a lot of work experience, what you'll want to do is you'll want to take individual sections of that and develop them out. So like say you were at a job for 5 years, you're going to want to break that 5-year job down into maybe individual years, maybe do it by 6 months. But the career timeline is an idea of like charting your highs and lows. What are peak experience that you had? First job was a disaster. Second job was okay, but I was living in a great roommate situation. And so why was that a plus? And to really look at that, you can get some really interesting clues. I remember what I said earlier about the client moving to the Midwest. Well, you can also understand what other people might hear about your story that you take for granted in doing that career timeline. So twists and turns, going back to school, non-traditional age students. I mean, there's lots of really interesting information. Making a career decision. So I have a client that was a graphic designer until she was asked to design a project, which was those really trashy sticky notes that they used to put on mailers to get you to respond. And she's like, yeah, ethically, I just can't do this anymore. So made a career decision to change careers then. So if you've been out of the workforce for a while, that was one of the questions that's being asked, how can you gather this feedback? You gather it from your friends, people that know you in different settings. And I would recommend that you actually send them out a couple of questions that they can answer, that they can take some time to think about that. So they don't just have to see you in a work setting. It's helpful because then they might be able to talk to you about, specific work skills and projects, but it can be people that see you in other environments too. And then one of the fun things I think for thinking about your personal brand and really thinking about kind of what it is that charges you up. But I ask clients all the time, if you were chosen to do a TED Talk, what would that be? What would your topic be? What's the one thing that you can talk about forever and ever and ever and ever? And I know that for some of you, it will be some topic that you're like, this has nothing to do with my professional career. I respect that, but I think that how you approach your TED Talk or how you approach the thing that you're passionate about does say other things about how you would approach your work. And it does kind of relate into personal brand attributes that you have that you can, that are part of your, again, really solidly part of your personal brand. So don't discount it. Maybe you wouldn't go and talk about, 13th century something or another like that. That's not going to be part of your job, but it's how do you approach that? Or what do you find fascinating about that? Or what is it that really excites you about that topic? There's probably some good clues there. So that can be a fun one to think about. If you, and to ask people that question too, you could always ask that as part of your, if you wanted to do some kind of an informal survey of people, you could ask them, if you could see me doing a TED Talk, what do you think my TED Talk would be about? And that could be some interesting feedback. Now, we talked about values earlier, and these are the things that you hold really, really dear to you. They tend to stay pretty static over time. These are things like fairness, justice, respect. There is actually a great website that has a value sort on it. It's called motivationalinterviewing.org. And it's a value sort, and you sort values into categories, all the time, some of the time, whatever, to get clear. Another exercise that you can do to really figure out what's important to you, by the way, when we go through our day and we get annoyed by things, it's generally because it's in a direct opposition of our value. Like, I cannot stand when people are not treated fairly. It just drives me crazy. So don't cut in line, right? Don't cut in line, because that's not treating other people fairly. So values are those things that we hold really dear and they're important to us. Go through your bank statement. Go through your online banking. Look and see, am I spending my money in accordance to values? Am I putting my money where I say, with directly to that? That can be an indicator too. So some people say, go look through your backpack. Go look on your desk. Is there something here that could tell you about your values? The other thing is, where are you with regard to emerging trends? I think that this is a piece of your personal brand, again, related kind of to the big picture or context. But are you an early adopter? Are you somebody who pushes that? Are you the skeptic? Are you where are you in that? Can be part of your personal brand. I think that that's an interesting place to look, particularly if you're thinking about, where do you want to kind of plug back into the workforce if you've been out for a while, is to think about, do you need to be challenged by that? Are you somebody who's, it's just a tool to get my work done, not really naturally interested in that, versus, I really like to kind of figure out how to utilize it and make it better. So emerging trends doesn't have to just be with technology. It can be around trends in your field. Bigger trends. I think that, all of us have experienced that in the last 2 years, right? The pandemic kind of accelerated some things and some trends that we're seeing, but particularly trends in the industry that you're coming from. If you're looking to do a pivot or looking to go into a new field, what trend have you experienced that maybe other industries are getting ready to experience? Can be a really helpful piece of your brand, especially if it was something that you really embraced and it was something that was interesting to you. I always say, pay attention to how other people introduce you, right? It can be very helpful when you're, unfortunately, a lot of us still aren't kind of socially back to where we were. But if you do have the opportunity to have people introduce you either to a group via email, one of the most interesting things that I tell my clients to pay attention to is if you ask somebody to make a LinkedIn introduction for you, look at how they introduce you on LinkedIn. Super helpful information about what they see as your personal brand, what they tend to draw attention to. Another thing that you can do is if a recruiter reaches out to you for whatever reason, if you're kind of starting to kind of look at options and a recruiter reaches out to you, ask that recruiter, what is it about my background that made you reach out to me? Another very interesting thing that gives you some clues about what your brand is by what they're seeing. And the roller coaster is for the pivots and the defining moments. What I talked about earlier is, have you gone through something? Has there been kind of that hero's journey, something important that you've gone through that would help, that helps to define or helps people to remember something about you, that something sticks in their mind for whatever reason. So it could be, making the sticky note, writing, being asked to design the sticky note and being like, oh my gosh, I'm having a career epiphany. I've got to get out of this field. Also, I'm working with an attorney right now who is in a really tough area of law, who really had like that defining moment, right, of working with a certain client, was like, yeah, I've got to pivot into another area. This isn't good for my mental health. And the thing is, nobody says, oh my gosh, couldn't hack it, couldn't handle it. People relate to that, right? So it's kind of sharing those personal moments, but understanding what is the value to sharing that. Like, is it just sharing it to share it, or is there something that helps to give context? Because what we don't want to do is we don't want to overload somebody with our brand to the point that they can't understand it or appreciate it. And it goes to this point here, which is, remember what I said. It's your values are really important to you. Your brand does change over time as you get more experience, but there's a lot of core attributes to your brand that will remain very static over time. And one of the things that we are in this crazy job market right now is that it's not just about what's going to fit for the company, but what's going to fit for you. And you need to do the due diligence of understanding what's important to you, where you fit. Are you somebody that really appreciates a sense of humor, but the organization that you're thinking about joining really takes themselves seriously? Might not be a good fit, right? So, and we have to be brave enough to say, not a good fit from my perspective, because I have never had a client who took a job, who ended up hating that job literally within the first month, who has come back to me and said, you know what? I didn't see any red flags. Every single one of them will come back and say, oh yeah, saw the red flags, just chose to ignore them. So, we've got to throw out this idea that there's an ideal candidate for every job, even though companies write their job descriptions like there is. No, because when you're clear about what you bring to the table and your unique career capital, what happens is your confidence carries over into how you write your resume, how you write that cover letter, how you show up at an interview. And with all that noise out there, having a clear point of view, not just like, this is what I bring to the table, this is why I'm awesome. It's not that at all. It's a clear point of view about the value that you bring and where you plug into an organization. That can be really compelling to a hiring manager. Very compelling. So going through this process, yes, it does take, some upfront time. It does take some personal reflection, some thoughtful reflection too. It's not usually like instantaneous, but it really is a worthwhile investment over time to make sure that you get to where you want to get to in the long run. And so if you are considering your options right now, this is a great place to start, because there will be some information that you gather in going through this process that will help tell you. You may think, oh, I could do anything. And I used to hear this a lot from liberal arts grads. I can do anything. And remember, I said we hire specialists, not generalists. And so specialists sometimes is just in getting really clear about what you do. There are things, I think probably at one point in my career, I would have said the same thing. Oh, I can do anything. And now what I realize is that there are some things that are completely off the table. Like I would never, ever, ever do a job where I needed to analyze spreadsheets. Could I? Probably. Just not a good fit for me, right? For lots of different reasons. But really understanding where you fit, build your confidence so that, and again, that comes across in the marketing materials and everything. So embrace your uniqueness. I love the idea of unicorns. If anybody's been in a job search, you've probably had the experience like, wow, companies are really looking for unicorns. Pilot marketing CEO actually had that happen to a client of mine. Needed a pilot, and the marketing, not a CEO, like not a marketing CEO, like a vice president of marketing, but embracing your uniqueness and things that are unusual about you. This is where we get to turn around those arguments that people might have about why we aren't a fit. For example, the person with the West Coast experience, right? Really thought in their mind, oh, that's going to be a deterrent for me getting this job, when actually it wasn't. It was one of the things that made her a more attractive candidate. So just embrace what's unique about you. Again, understanding the value of it really does translate to the hiring manager. You may not be exactly what they're looking for, but when you're confident about where you plug in, you can have more transparency through the process too. Hey, it was a great job. I don't think the way that you've described it, and the more that I've learned about it, I don't think this is the job for me. And we're seeing that a lot more throughout, all size of organizations, nonprofits, social mission organizations, social impact, company, large organizations, small organizations, medium-sized organizations, is more of a transparency about, this is what I bring to the table, feeling like you should be able to be candid about that, versus I'm going to try to fit into what you're looking for. That never works. Absolutely never works. And I always say generic only works for cereal. Now I'll buy generic cereal, but only after I've discovered that I like cornflakes, right? But if you present yourself as a generic candidate that can do everything, or kind of use their job description to be like, oh, well, this is what they must be looking for, I've got to just make sure I absolutely match this, you lose out on really bringing the unique things that you bring to the table, and really feeling like you can talk about those things. And, we want to show up as our whole selves at work, right? We don't want to keep like a piece of us, hidden over here. That's what I think, for many of us, that's what, inclusion looks like, right? Is being able to bring our whole self to work and it be appreciated. So I just, please, get clear about this, show up, bring your whole self to whatever it is, and use that in conversations when you're potentially looking for new opportunities. And then so somebody's asking if you're inside of an organization and you're looking to enhance your personal brand. I think the one thing is you've got to really understand what is your personal brand within that organization. And then look for individuals that will give you some really concrete feedback about what you could do to up-level your career to the next level. So, and really understanding what the company values. Companies write, and I'm not cynical, but companies will put really great things on their websites about what they're all about. But then when you interview with them, you're like, I'm not really seeing that. So understand what a company really values, and really understand where you are currently, what they really value, and then assess, are there ways that I could grow my personal brand in those areas, or stand for more of the things that I hold true to, that I know that the company does true too. Is there a way that I could take more of a stand for that? All right, so we're going to go to questions and answers. I can elaborate on any of those too, but I want to give enough time for questions and answers, even though I kind of tried to answer those as we were going. Anyone? I guess you could put them into chat.
Yeah, they can use the chat and the Q&A feature.
Sure. Yep.
Stacey, one quick question. So as we've built our personal brand and as we've identified those things, how, you do talk about the discourse a little. There could be discourse between what's on a website and what is part of the interview process. How do you dig a little bit deeper into that? Because, with interviews, people are putting their best foot forward, both the panelists and the person who's interviewing. So how do you dig a little bit deeper to try to find those, to make sure that your values match the company's values?
I think that asking questions such as, what's going to be my biggest surprise in coming to work here? I don't like to ask questions that I think that the interviewers can prepare for. Instead, I like to ask questions that are going to cause them to kind of take a step back, and I might get a little bit more of a candid response to. I think finding people within the organization to say, what is this company really like? What do I need to know about working here? Give me a couple of pros, give me a couple of cons, and really pressing for that, because I think that there's a whole area out there called employer branding, right? They're very savvy about how they're presenting themselves, and what we really want to do is we want to understand is how they're describing it, and how they're describing it and how their employees experience it. Is there consistency there? And I think that, there's only so much due diligence that you can do in an interview without, and so it's no fault if you end up in a company that's not a good fit for you. You'll learn from that, obviously, right? And you'll learn to ask better questions. I never ask people to describe their hiring skill or their hiring philosophy, or not their hiring. I'll never ask a manager to describe what their management style is, because you'll hear the same thing. It's not helpful. So instead, I would ask them, if I was interviewing directly with the manager, I'd be like, based on what you know about me and about you, where could there be potential friction with us?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
We had a question come in about how would I be able to apply my brand into my resume or cover letter?
Oh, that's a great question. So again, knowing what you're emphasizing, how you're talking about your background, themes and threads are really important to cover letters and resumes. And by that, I mean not including all of the information, but instead just including the information that's relevant to the themes or the threads. And those themes and those threads are not like, I'm a people person, but instead it's things like, I'm a people manager potentially, or I'm a relationship builder, or I'm a great project manager, or I understand about compliance. So kind of think about it. I always think about like a Venn diagram, and think about the three main areas or threads that you have, and then think about how all the intersections, and use those places to kind of describe yourself, or how you want to present your brand on paper. I mean, there's a limit to what we can do on paper, right? Again, resumes are one-dimensional, just like job descriptions are. A great cover letter, I think, is not an overview of everything that you've done, but pointing to one specific example that is relevant to the company, that shows that you understand what the job is all about, or what the main pain point is in that job, or a main pain point. Something that demonstrates that you understand what the job's about, the problems that that job solves by sharing one example of a similar problem that you helped to solve or that you were involved in. Conversational rather than super formal.
I think we have time for one more question, but Stacey, while we wait to see if there are any additional, is there anything else that we should consider, or any other things that our audience should be aware of as we're considering our personal brand?
Yeah, let me just share that it's really hard to do for yourself. Let me just emphasize that piece again, right? Like, really kind of you describing your personal brand is not nearly as effective as trying to get other people's to describe it for you and using their words. They're just so much richer, and they encapsulate that emotional appeal, right? That you have, or that quality, those qualities that you bring. So I would say, don't try to do it in a vacuum, because it's the rabbit hole of like continually rewriting your resume until it's perfect. Use other people to help you with this in this process. It can be a little maybe awkward a little bit sometimes at the beginning, but I would just encourage you all, like, just take that approach. Don't try to do this on your own, because you'll get frustrated and probably give up. And again, I would just say the other thing to keep in mind is you can't be all things to all people. And knowing what you do bring to the table, it may not be. I always say you don't need 50 jobs, you need one job, right? And so it may not be what 50 companies are interested in, but there will be a company that is interested in that or sees the fit. And I know that's hard. I know that's hard to hold on to that vision. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Well, Stacey, it looks like we don't have any additional questions, but if folks do have a question that comes up down the road, please feel free to reach out to myself or Stacey. I provided her information in the chat. Stacey, thank you so much for sharing some ways with us that we can leverage our brand to find and bring opportunities our direction. We appreciate your time, your insights, and your willingness to share this with our alumni and our students. If you enjoyed this conversation, check out the WooStream playlist on Willamette's YouTube channel. We'd also love to hear your suggestions for alumni, faculty, or guests we should connect with, or topics that we could pursue. Write us at alumni@willamette.edu. Thank you again for joining us. And as always, please take care.